Oh man, I hate Mondays.
With being one of the biggest names in pop culture, it's no surprise that Garfield's likeness has been slapped on a handful of movies throughout the mid to late 2000s. And with movies released during this time frame come movie tie-in games. Some of these feel like blatant cash grabs, while others feel like they really shouldn't have been made at all. And that's what I'm talking about today.
Garfield! Breakfast! Feed me.
Garfield Gets Real for the Nintendo DS is a game based on the direct-to-DVD film of the same name. Yep, you heard that right. A movie that didn't even come out in theaters got its own tie-in game. If that wasn't bad enough, this game was also published by DSi Games. No, not that DSi. This DSi. This is probably one of the worst excuses for a tie-in game I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever played something from start to finish and can't come up with a single positive thing to say about it. This game runs so far away from the source material to where it feels like the devs just looked at bullet points instead of watching the film themselves. The story of Garfield Gets Real takes place in the comic world, and Garfield's depressed because he hates being famous. So he ends up going through a portal into the real world and needs to get back to the comic world before he's replaced in the funny papers. Listen, I tried to make sense of this film myself, but what the fuck's the point? I'm a 22-year-old living in my parents' basement, talking about a kids movie that looks like a cross between Big Mouth and Mr. Meaty. None of this makes sense in the first place. What's even more confusing is that this movie spawned a franchise of straight-to-DVD films, with Garfield's Fun Fest in 2008 and Garfield's Pet Force in 2009. The game itself is really just a handful of mini-games, with the first few levels having Garfield collect various flying objects. And I don't know who animated this thing, but this Garfield is doing everything that Garfield should not be doing. How do you try and make sense that the laziest character in all of entertainment jumps like he's training for the fucking Olympics? It's not addressed, but I'm pretty sure that Garfield is in the real world at this point in the game, but there are no humans around, and this whole level feels like something out of the back rooms, filled with swings that can clothesline me without my consent. Even the simplest of platforming, jumping from one spot to another, is insufferable. And these swinging bars are completely RNG. There's times when the next bar you're reaching for is going in the same direction as the bar you're already on. And the best thing about it is that Garfield does not turn around. He can only stop or go straight. So when platforming gets involved, this playground became a whole new level of dread. It took me a solid hour before I could even get past this point, so I couldn't even process the fact that I was walking down this slide. But who honestly cares? I finally made it to the end. Oh, would you look at that? It's the same merry-go-round at the start of the level, which means we went in a giant circle. Amazing level design here. Great job, guys. I don't know who decided this, but apparently you can't have a Garfield game without some rhythm aspect thrown in. So here we have this, which is just a huge combo of nonsense. They don't even tell you what button to press here. It's just Garfield and all these obnoxious poses. There's another mini game where you chase after this guy working the hot dog stand, but the hot dogs are hamburgers. I stopped asking questions a long time ago. Oh, we can't forget my favorite minigame of all. This is literally the same level you've already played, but now you have strangers yell at you.
I'm seriously considering retiring from showbiz.
Shut up!
Even when this game attempts to add a feeling of suspense, you can't help but notice that the scary fire in the background is really just a JPEG with jiggle physics. If you couldn't tell already, the developers could care less about this game. I didn't even mention that every time you beat a level, you get shown a screen that says Bargain Bin Movie, and that the end of the game leaves you with the headline, Garfield DVD A Letdown. You ever heard the saying, a game feels half-baked? Well, I don't think this game was put in the oven to begin with. In fact, it's fucking frozen. Oh my god.
I'm frozen! I can't do anything!
I would have thought that this game would be mediocre at best, considering it came out nearly 2 years after the film's release. I'm not even making this up. Garfield Gets Real, the movie, released in August of 2007. This movie tie-in game didn't release until July of 2009. The back of the box even says, based on the upcoming Garfield Gets Real DVD. I can only imagine that this is what the devs looked like when it finally came out. The only thing I see on this game is the game's publisher, and the logo for Paws Incorporated, which is the company that licenses Garfield. Did Jim Davis himself work on this? The official wiki page for Garfield Gets Real DS says that it was made by a company called Gravity Eye, but that name is nowhere to be found in the game itself. They also made the special edition of Deal or No Deal for DS, and then just fell off the face of the earth, because that's all that's on here. Apparently there was also a Wii version set to release but got cancelled mid-development. Is this a blessing in disguise? As a Garfield fan myself, yes. Keeping it going with the DS titles, we've got Garfield's Fun Fest. Unlike Garfield Gets Real, this game was released the same month as the movie, rather than 2 years after. This game was also developed by Black Lantern Studios, the guys behind Iron Chef America Supreme Cuisine. I can't believe what I'm seeing. The absolute balls on these game devs. They completely ditched the art style from the straight-to-DVD films, flushing Jim Davis's creative vision straight down the... But I don't really care, because to me they did Garfield good. Garfield's Fun Fest is about the comic studio hosting its 30th annual talent show to decide who gets the top of the comic strip. Garfield realizes he's not funny anymore, and will lose if he doesn't find the funny water he read about in a bedtime story. It's discovered later that the funny water is just water, so he ends up winning the competition by just being himself. What a fucking awful story. If you want a better telling of it, save yourself a good hour and just read the cutscenes between the game's levels. The game itself revolves around Garfield's energy bar. You fill up Garfield's energy by eating food, and if you run out of energy, you fall asleep and switch to playing as Odie, whose job is to get an alarm clock to wake up Garfield. If you drain your energy bar again, it's game over. This is actually a pretty good gimmick, except for the fact that I have to listen to Garfield snore every time I play as Odie. There's a bit of level variety here, with a good chunk being more Garfield rhythm games. The music here is actually really good, easily the best out of the lineup. The only problem that I have with this game is that it's really short. I was able to beat all 15 levels in under an hour. There were also a few levels that just copied and pasted the same environment over again, but with different objectives, which I guess makes sense since some levels take place in the same area, but you can't really get away with that in a 2D platformer. Overall, if you're looking for an alright Garfield game with some charming animation, I'd consider checking this one out.
Wake up, cocksuckers, it's over!
Let's take it back to the year 2006, when 20th Century Studios said the world needs another live-action Garfield movie, which came with 2 movie tie-in games. God, is this movie horrible. The plot is based around Garfield going to England. He eventually gets mixed up with another cat that looks exactly like him. Apparently, this British version of Garfield has just inherited an entire castle that the villain thought he was supposed to get, but his name was not in the will of the queen that just died. I really don't even know anymore. Long story short, the villain attempts to kill them both but fails and ends up getting arrested. What a shock. Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties for the Nintendo DS is a game developed by 2 tribes, most notably known for the game Toki Tori on GBC. This game, of course, has no correlation to the film's plot. Instead, you play as Garfield as he roams the streets of England to meet the prince for a royal dinner. There's really nothing of substance in this game. The only time you're gonna be shitting bricks from excitement is when you finally come across an enemy. That right there is the only form of life that's in this game outside of Garfield. No John, no Odie, no British people, nothing. Well, at least I can get some one-liners by my favorite voice actor, Bill Murray, right? Yeah, no. Garfield himself doesn't talk either, which was acceptable in Fun Fest, because I actually felt like I was playing as Garfield. But with the camera being so far away, and Garfield himself being subjected to just meowing, I feel like any other fat orange cat. And put emphasis on fat. Because my god, is this pussy hungry? You might as well slap the menu from the Costco food court in this thought bubble. You'd think that all these collectibles would do something. Refill your health, anything. But nope, they do nothing. This game in its entirety is a real head scratcher. Like this level where you have to go through a hedge maze when Garfield could easily hop across the entire thing if he really wanted to. Or this level when you're in the basement of the castle and all Garfield is thinking about is green exit sign. I wonder when Garfield will think about the power switch on the right side of my DS, because that's all I'm thinking about. I should also point out that this game's music makes me feel like I took a laxative. Now for some positives. If you're a big fan of sewers, then this game is for you. Because there's at least 10 of them. And the final level is actually pretty intense. But at this point, I was just fully numb. Oh shit. Call me Al Pacino, because just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in with Garfield 2 for PS2. This game was developed by Asobo Studio. They're mostly known for their work on quite a few Pixar games for home consoles, as well as, and I shit you not, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I can't tell if this is a casual gamer's worst nightmare or dream come true. There's 4 different areas to quote, explore throughout the castle, but there's nothing to necessarily do within them except walk to each of the minigames that are scattered around the map. Almost all the minigames involve collecting things except for, oh yeah, you thought we were done with this? Oh, think again. This game is Garfield at his most athletic. Garfield can spin attack, ground pound, double jump, super jump, wall jump. I mean, when does it stop? Just look at the range on this long jump. When would Garfield be doing any of this? Now, I will say the model of Garfield in this game does look pretty good, but then again, we're working with the movie model, which I try not to think about. And I did enjoy this one minigame where you play as a mouse solving puzzles, but I did get slightly depressed when I realized that this mouse wasn't Louis the Mouse from Garfield 2004, played by award-winning actor and father of 12, Nick Cannon. Also, for all my British viewers out there, whose fucking chimneys look like this? Now, how do you beat this game? Well, the only way to do so is by 100%ing it, meaning you have to collect all 400 lasagnas and complete all 5 minigames in the garden, the castle interior, the sewers, and the rooftops. And when you're finally done with that, you get this. I can now go to the catacombs. Ooh, sounds spooky, right? It's literally just where the boss fight is, and it's so bad, I don't even want to talk about it. But wait, you now have access to Nightmare Mode. That's my reward for completing the game. Nightmare Mode. The nightmare is just resetting the game. The only time I actually cracked a smile was seeing the occasional glitch, but that's really it. Stay away from this game like it's a lasagna from Normal. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. PS2.